We talk about all the time on this channel. I'm starting to become a broken record, but I do it on purpose because I want to keep reiterating the fundamental messages of this channel. So we talk a lot about how the Western world is very logical and conscious. Let's not even say conscious yet. Let's just start with very logic focused and very intuition averse or unaware. There's like a fogginess where we've forgotten what that even means or how that works. And that's the more body-based, emotion-based, intuitive system, right? So the Western world, we're very cut off from that. So here's basically what's happening, as you may have noticed. As we become more cut off from that, we become more dissociated from what's happening in our physical lives, in our physical bodies. So we go into this headspace, this sort of idealistic logic, here's what should be happening. Like, here is all my criteria for what my life is supposed to be, for what I'm supposed to be, for what other people are supposed to be. And it's very clean, it's very idealistic, it's very perfected, because it's the conscious mind. So it's coming from this upper head sort of energy of like, this is my vision. And we're very big on that in the West. And then as we travel down the body, we get more and more averse, literally more and more averse to what is happening as we go down. So like the heart, opening your heart, being vulnerable, we're still not too good at that, but we're starting to become aware that it's important. We're at least open to discussing it. Some people. We've got Brene Brown kind of leading that charge. And then as we move down, we've got like the sacral center, which is like sexuality. Still lots of taboos, lots of shame, lots of stuff tied up there. The root, feeling a sense of belonging, getting your needs met, big issues there. So all this lower stuff, we've got big issues. So it's really nice to be up here where we can have our idealistic, perfected vision of what our lives are going to be, right? All of the, there's like a million Instagram accounts and YouTube channels that are like motivational, productivity focused, telling you to create your own life and achieve your own goals and never stop and just be motivated and just keep going and blah, 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 blah. There's a reason a lot of that is spearheaded by men, because men have a tendency to feel at home in that area. Not all, but some, enough that they've kind of spearheaded that. And it kind of is a comfortable place for us in the Western world because it's comfortable to espouse ideas and beliefs that kind of match the culture you're in, right? It's not so comfortable to espouse ideas and beliefs that ruffle the feathers of the culture that you're in. So, for example, some of the things that are currently ruffling the feathers of Western culture are anything occult, anything that mentions archetypes, astrology, anything in the realm of like the dark stuff. The stuff we were just talking about is like the light, right? It's like, here's my vision, here's my productivity system that I'm going to use, and we kind of can take that and run with it. Visualization, that's another thing that is accepted in mainstream self-help culture. You visualize what you want and you just go after it. Basically everything that's espoused by law of attraction, we can think of that as the yang, the more masculine driven version. It's very convenient, it's very simple, right? Because again, we're only dealing with 10% of ourselves, basically 10% of our control, which we don't realize usually, but we're dealing with that 10%. So it's very clean, very simple, very 1, 2, 3 steps to success. There are people who work within the system and they're very good at it, and maybe they get people results and help people, and that's great. This is not a demonizing of yang culture. This is to say, the reality of life is that the bulk of what is happening is yin. The bulk of what is happening is subconscious. It is, in our case right now, shadow. Now that's because of how the culture developed. It's not that everything has to be in shadow. It's that we've put everything there. So because we put everything in shadow, that's where it is right now. It's in that subconscious storehouse. This is very important to understand if you want to do shadow work and actually understand what's even going on. So you have this storage unit. What does it include? Well, it includes everything that happened and it affected you and you forgot that it happened. Everything in the periphery. So you go to your job and there's one main thing that you're focusing on. Everything else is in the periphery. All of that stuff in the periphery goes to the unconscious, gets stored in that storage unit. Things are being compiled there because they are all things that are going to assist you in leading a safe life. Another important thing to understand, right? We're doing this comparison, conscious mind, logic, unconscious mind, kind of irrational, survival-based, very instinctual, right? So the conscious mind, the interesting thing about the conscious mind is that it deals with logic, right? It deals with reason. So this is when you're like weighing pros and cons, you can talk yourself into something or out of something. You can be persuaded for or against something. Do I have self-esteem or do I not have self-esteem? Should I go out tonight or should I stay in? Should I pursue this goal in my career or should I start a new career? And you can weigh all these pros and cons, but what you'll notice is that no matter how much of that you do, it's usually not, there's this, you can feel this other piece that's not being dealt with, right? The conscious mind is like a spectrum, right? You can reason your way toward this or logic your way away from it. And it's like this kind of back and forth, wishy-washy, all over the place thing because it's based on facts, right? So it's kind of like, well, if I gather enough facts, I can do this. But if I gather enough facts against it, I can do that. It's this spectrum, and you can kind of move around the spectrum freely. Okay, that's the conscious mind. The unconscious is nothing like that. Because it's automatic, right? Heart rate, blood's pumping, all this automatic stuff going on in the body. Because it is for your survival, it is not wishy-washy. It is not on a spectrum. It is black or white. It is like a light switch. So the light switch is either on or it's off, and there's nothing else. So taking that same issue, some of the same issues I just said, self-esteem, light switch is either on or it's off, based on what information is in that storage unit of consciousness. Based on the information that is stored there, we should have either high self-esteem or low self-esteem, period. There is no weighing the pros and cons in the subconscious. Again, the career move is either safe or it's unsafe. It's either desirable, go ahead, it's fine, or no, red alert, absolutely not, it's not going to happen. That's what's happening in your subconscious based on your past experiences, based on what you believe to be true, based on those past experiences, the emotions associated, all of that is hopelessly tied in with your survival. You cannot separate it. It is what that system exists for. It is for your survival, right? So it prioritizes your survival, funny enough, over your quality of life. So your conscious mind knows that you can take a risk and potentially improve your life. The unconscious, not so much. It doesn't really believe in that way because, again, like we always say, it's more of like an animal. And this is where we start to see the conscious mind at odds with the subconscious, because the conscious mind has this perfected, idealized vision, and the subconscious is like, that's not even real. None of that has ever happened for us. That doesn't exist. You're going to get yourself killed. When we see the law of attraction folks and the just do it folks and the positivity folks and the motivational speakers who are like mind over matter, that's literally the essence of this yang energy is mind over matter. It's like saying this 10% of me is stronger than the 90% of me. It's like saying this conscious part of me is going to be able to drag the rest of me with it, kicking and screaming. Which, again, this is what resistance is about, right? Resistance is about, I'm not on board with myself. My animal self is not on board with my conscious, logical idea of what I would like to do. So this is where we get into the territory of self-sabotage. The person is trying to drag that 90% with the 10%. I want to go to Africa on a mission trip or whatever the hell. And the subconscious is like, everybody dies in Africa. There's constant wars. We've seen them on TV. We remember all those people talking about it. The storage unit comes in and it's like, fuck no, we're not going there. You're going to die, right? And conscious you is like, no, I have this grand vision. I'm going to do this mission. I'm going to help people, blah, 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 right? So it's dragging the 90%. What's going to happen there is one of two things. The person is not going to end up going. That's what usually happens. The person has this conscious ideal or goal, and it never gets accomplished. You know, they just talk about it. They think about it. They tell everyone, I'm going to do it one day, one of these days, and they never do it. It's total bullshit, right? Because they're not on board with actually doing it. That's the usual thing that happens. Second thing that happens, someone who's really determined and ambitious, what's going to happen is they're going to go do, in this case, their mission trip, and things are going to go wrong. They're going to, the night before they go to get on the plane, they're going to get sick, and they're going to get so sick that they have to go to the hospital and they can't go. You can even have, this is really interesting, you can have like crimes of omission start to happen, where I have this happen all the time. It's hilarious and infuriating, where you're going to do something, but like part of you really doesn't want to do it. And so you accidentally omit something so that you can't go forward with it. Like a trip you don't want to do or something, there's some sort of fear coming up, and you pack everything and you get ready and you go to the airport and like you don't have your passport or something totally lame and stupid, because it's like there had to be a wrench thrown in that plan. This is how the subconscious is. It had to throw a wrench in the plan to get you to not do it because it's unsafe, even if it's safe, right? Even if things have changed and it is now safe, doesn't matter. Subconscious doesn't know that. It's an animal. It's instinctual. It'll just throw a wrench in whatever you're doing. How do we merge these two parts of self to go after one thing without resistance? This is what Carolyn Elliott calls the undivided will, right? We're not split from that head vision and that body safety. It's not, they come together and they do one thing. How do you get that then? This is funny. This is where everybody drops off. And the reason everybody drops off right there is because we live in the culture of yang. We live in the culture of the logical mind and its logical frameworks. And so on this channel, that's why I always talk about opening the lines of communication between the conscious and the unconscious, because then we will at least begin to get that information, and we will start to see exactly why and how we are literally holding ourselves back from the things that we say we want. We'll start to experience ourselves holding ourselves back instead of it just being completely unconscious and we're just blaming circumstances. So, someone who doesn't have that connection open, they're gonna pursue things, sabotage them, and then blame something circumstantial as the reason it didn't work out, right? It's like that famous Carl Jung quote, your subconscious will direct your life and you will call it fate. You will call it something else that was outside of your control. So step one, we open the lines of communication, and then we will have that very rare experience of, oh, I'm not disempowered. I'm completely doing this myself. And the reason I'm not moving toward what I want is because I'm choosing not to. It's just the animal in me that is choosing not to. So the way that you deal with your unconscious is through non-logical processes. One fundamental way that you could start to open up this dialogue where you tell the unconscious what you want and the unconscious tells you things about what it wants, one of the primary ways that you would do that is through ritual. Like I said, this is where everyone in the Western world drops off because it's just too much. They can't get there. It's too, we've written off, so I can do a whole episode on ritual, and because it's, we've sanitized it and written it off to the degree that we have convinced ourselves in the Western world that we are superior to it. We've risen above it. So you see this theme again of like up in the head, right? I'm not an animal. I don't have a body. I don't have instincts. I don't have feelings. All of that, like my guts don't exist, is literally what it is. It's like this doesn't exist. Just this exists. This is the ideal. And so when you introduce an idea that is extremely yin, like ritual, like meditation that's not about clearing your mind, right? We're big on meditation, but only if it's practical and useful and helps us achieve a goal, right? This is incredibly obvious, but feeling feelings in the body, this is easier for people with greater sensitivity because people with greater sensitivity can't shut it off. That's part of being sensitive, is you can't turn off your feelings, right? That's what makes you such a problem in modern life, is like you can't turn off your feelings. They're always telling the truth or some version of what's true for you right now in this moment. And so you can't shut that off, and that makes you a problem, right? In our cultural context, it makes you sick. It means you have to go to the psych doctor and get some medicine because there's something has gone wrong, is the narrative of the sensitive person. Something has gone wrong. Don't worry, we'll fix you so that you're desensitized again. Sensitive people have a tendency in this culture to be more in pain. Being in more pain, it's very, very, very hard to see this at first. Very hard to see this. But being in more pain puts you in touch with what? That lower stuff that's been written off as like less than us, right? It's animal, it's primitive, it's get it out of here. We hate that stuff, right? If you are a sensitive person, you're in touch with it and you can't help it. So you're going to be in more pain. Again, not because sensitivity equals pain. This is important, right? Not because sensitivity is pain, not because having emotions is pain, but because of the cultural situation we've set up so that it's not allowed to exist. Everything gets stuffed into shadow instead of being dealt with openly and with compassion. And so it gets stuffed there. It becomes terrifying to us. And then every once in a while, it jumps up and scares the shit out of us, right? So I had this, I didn't realize how deep this rabbit hole went until last year. I was doing really deep shadow work, and I ended up uncovering something really foreign, something really deep down that I totally disidentified with. Like, that is so totally not me. And what ended up happening as I was moving towards something I wanted, I actually ended up getting the thing I wanted. Like, mostly. I mostly got the thing I wanted. But it hit a point where it started to get too good. And then my subconscious, like, ripped me back down to, like, bottom, rock bottom. And so I actually woke up in the middle of the night in the middle of a really, really, really bad panic attack. And I don't typically get panic attacks. I got them in the past, but I woke up during this period of, like, starting to hit these new levels of empowerment that it was totally foreign to me. I'd never experienced that sort of empowerment. And so I'm hitting these things, and as I'm hitting them, I'm simultaneously starting to experience these rock bottom, like, severe, debilitating panic, debilitating intrusive thoughts, very polarized and opposed to my conscious mind, extremely polarized, exact opposite of what I was thinking and feeling consciously. Now, for people who get far enough into shadow integration work, this is often the point where people get really spooked and they back off, and they, because this happened to me, I get it. You think something has gone wrong, like my psyche is, like, broken. Something broke, but nothing broke. It's actually functioning exactly as it should, because as you move, and this is a good practice for anyone who wants to maybe find out what is subconsciously holding them back, but maybe you're not very sensitive, you don't really feel things very deeply, and so it's hard for you to pinpoint. What you do, if you want to do it in a yang way, you just start to pursue what you want really directly. Go for it. Just start doing it. And what will happen as you pursue those things, especially if you start achieving those things, what will happen is the shadow will start coming up and coming up and coming up. I'm trying not to block my microphone. It'll start coming up, and all of a sudden you're having these great experiences, like, oh, I'm really making progress in life. Why am I suddenly, like, debilitatingly ill all the time? Why am I having, like, vicious, like, migraines? Or why am I having panic attacks out of nowhere? Why can't I sleep all of a sudden? Why can't I calm down? The shadow is coming up. It's, like, following you as you're making these improvements. It's following you, and it's saying, hey, I'm still here. Hey, I still exist. I know that our culture has completely cut itself all off from the body and said it's primitive, it's stupid, get rid of that stuff. But it's still here, though. And it's still here, and you still have to deal with it. So a little fun fact that I found out that really encapsulates what I'm talking about is when this culture that we live in now was forming, when it was really, like, getting its roots and taking shape, this was also during the time where everything was about puritanical, religious, very, like, distorted yang, not like positive yang, but very distorted yang, like, morality, like this kind of fake morality we see in, like, the distorted yang, like puritanical, God, you know, fire and brimstone nonsense. God's gonna punish you unless you get rid of your feelings, your animal self, your sexuality, right? Get rid of everything associated with the lower chakras, and then you can be holy and pure, right? This idealized self, all in the head. It's just an idea. It's not real. So during the time that this culture was getting started, a fun fact is that we actually wouldn't allow female anatomy to be published in medical textbooks. Talk about literal. That's how literal it used to be. That we wouldn't publish female anatomy in medical textbooks. Why is that? It makes perfect sense, right? Women's the lower half of women's bodies is the utter and complete embodiment of everything that has been pushed out of this culture, right? It is the yin, it is the body, it is the animal, it is the irrational, it's all of it. It is the terrifying, like childbirth, like things that you have no control of, where it's nature is in control and you are just along for the ride. That, I think, has traumatized everybody. And so our response to that was create this incredibly rigid, incredibly yang, puritanical culture where everything is under control all the time. Female anatomy doesn't exist. It's so inconvenient, even today, this is a bit of a tangent, I know, but it's important to really tie it all together. Even in the medical field today, we have something you'll hear about a lot in the alternative medicine world is women's gaslighting by the medical industry. I experienced a lot of this when I was young, a lot of it. So I'm very familiar. My body's always been very loud, very aggressive with like symptoms and very psychosomatic, like everything's super connected to my emotions. So in the Western world, when you're female, you often have, let's say you're having physical symptoms and they're related to your hormones, your reproductive organs, basically anything feminine and vague that they can't really identify. You go in and you tell them, and they'll tell you that you're making it up and that you need to go on psych meds or whatever, because again, people nowadays often, I think, don't understand that we've cast out this part of reality. So they're living in a world where these issues literally don't exist, or they exist because something's broken in you. You're broken. This video is getting probably really long at this point. I'm gonna cut it off here, but I wanted to give you an overview of how all these different things are connected. And, the left brain and the right brain. Oh, okay. One more thing I wanted to mention. Again, just giving you another example of how all these things are connected. How I keep saying that the conscious mind is 10%, right? It's not the whole. It can't see the whole. The subconscious is the whole. This is an idea that is in Iain McGilchrist's book, where he talks about the differences between the left and right brain hemispheres. So one thing that's interesting that's laid out in that book is that when people have right hemisphere damage, when they have, basically not, the right hemisphere is more associated with the unconscious. When people have right hemisphere damage, they can't draw pictures of whole objects. They can only draw pictures of half objects or pieces of objects. So if you ask someone with a lot of right hemisphere damage to draw a picture of a chair, they can actually only draw pieces of a chair. So again, this left brain, it can see the pieces, it can see little pieces. It can see parts of a whole. It can't see the whole. What I'm trying to illuminate here is that mysteries are not mysteries. We've built a culture that's based on the 10% of perception, literally within the brain. This is demonstrated, like on paper, in scientific research. We've built a culture around this 10% perspective of reality. Because, I believe, because we're afraid of nature, it's too scary because it's in control and we're not. And so now we see everything in the occult world as a mystery, as magical, as nonsense, as not real, as where's the evidence for it, right? Prove it. We can't prove it. Well, no, not through the scientific method. You can't prove it because it's not a part of this. It's outside of the scientific method. And so we're very confused and we think everything's a mystery. We think everything that's happening in our bodies is a mystery, but it's not. It's just what has always been. So thank you for watching this video. I hope it wasn't too confusing or dense. Feel free to share any of this content that you think might interest people. I know I haven't been posting much on YouTube, but it seems like the channel is growing kind of without my intervention, so that's kind of cool. I'm gonna start trying to post more consistently. We'll see how that goes. I'll see you in the next video.